phone call ends mid-sentence. A pilot vanishes over open ocean. A man walks out of a bar and into nothing. These aren't fiction. These are real people who disappeared without a single convincing answer. And the cases that haunt investigators the most aren't the ones with no evidence. They're the ones with just enough evidence to destroy you with questions. Missing persons cases sit at the darkest intersection of crime, human psychology, and raw chance. Some of the most famous disappearances in history, cases with global search efforts, satellite technology, dedicated task forces, and millions of dollars spent, still have no definitive resolution. That should terrify you. Because if we couldn't find them, what does that say about the limits of what we actually know? Let's start with the one that rewrote how the world thinks about aviation risk. On July 2nd, 1937, Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, took off from Lae, New Guinea, attempting to complete a circumnavigation of the Earth. They never landed. The last confirmed radio transmission came from somewhere over the Pacific, a crackling, distorted signal that described poor visibility and low fuel. Then, silence. The U.S. Navy launched one of the largest search operations in history at the time. Ships, planes, 17 days of active searching across 250,000 square miles of open ocean. Nothing. For decades, the official explanation was that the plane ran out of fuel and plunged into the Pacific. But here's what the official explanation doesn't account for. A series of radio distress signals received in the days after the disappearance, some analyzed by the Coast Guard, that may have originated from a living person on a remote island. The signals were dismissed. Earhart was declared legally dead, and the Pacific kept it secret. But Earhart isn't the only case where what we think happened and what actually happened may be separated by an enormous, uncomfortable gap. Stay with this, because one case coming up completely dismantles the idea that a person can only vanish in remote or dangerous conditions. Jimmy Hoffa was one of the most powerful labor leaders in American history, a man with deep connections to organized crime, a man who had enemies who knew exactly how to make problems disappear. On July 30th, 1975, he left his home in Bloomfield Township, Michigan, to meet two men at a restaurant. He was seen in the parking lot. Then he was gone. No body, no crime scene, no confirmed cause of death. The FBI investigated for decades. They dug up fields, searched landfills, tested soil samples from suburban properties. There were informants, confessions that led nowhere, and theories that ranged from burial under Giant Stadium to incineration at a Detroit facility. His remains have never been found. A man who moved through public life like a force of nature, a man people recognized on sight, simply ceased to exist. And the silence around his disappearance has the specific, deliberate texture of people who know what happened and will take that knowledge to their graves. The disappearance of Maura Murray on February 9, 2004. Maura was a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts. She sent an email to her professors saying there had been a family emergency. She withdrew money from her bank account, packed personal belongings, and drove north into rural New Hampshire alone at night. Her car crashed along Route 112, a stretch of dark road flanked by dense forest and almost no artificial light. A witness stopped to check on her and offered to call police. She said no. When police arrived minutes later, the car was empty. A faint smell of alcohol, a broken driver's side window, and the cold, pitiless trees lining a road that seemed to swallow her whole. Hundreds of searches covered that forest. Cadaver dogs, volunteers, nothing. Maura Murray has never been found, and the email she sent before she left, written before any family emergency actually occurred, suggests she was planning to disappear. What she was running from remains one of the most debated questions in true crime. Then there's a disappearance that didn't happen in an isolated forest or over a remote ocean. It happened in a holiday apartment in a resort town, with people nearby, in a country with functioning law enforcement.
In May 2007, 3-year-old Madeleine McCann vanished from a holiday apartment in Praia da Luz, Portugal. Her disappearance remains one of the world's most perplexing unsolved mysteries.
Her parents were dining at a nearby restaurant, checking on their children periodically. During one of those checks, she was gone. A window was open. There were witness accounts of a man carrying a child. There were suspects, investigations by 3 different countries, a reward that reached millions. Decades of renewed forensic attention, a German suspect officially named, but no confirmed answer, no remains, no definitive resolution to what happened in that apartment between a sleeping child and whatever entered the darkness after her. Brandon Swanson's disappearance carries a different kind of horror, the horror of a voice that simply stops. On May 14, 2008, the 19-year-old Minnesota college student called his parents after crashing his car in a ditch near Lind, Minnesota. He was walking, talking to his father on the phone, trying to find a familiar landmark. His father heard him say one word, something that sounded like a curse or a sudden shock, and then the call went dead. His phone tracked to a single tower. Searches of the area found nothing. Not his body, not his footprints, not one piece of physical evidence to explain how a young man on the phone with his father in a flat, open landscape simply ceased to be. And then there is Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. On March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777 carrying 239 people took off from Kuala Lumpur bound for Beijing. Less than an hour into the flight, communication systems went dark. Military radar tracked the plane making deliberate course changes, turns that had to be manually programmed. It flew for hours on an altered heading before the signal vanished over the southern Indian Ocean. The largest multinational search in aviation history found almost nothing. Scattered debris washed ashore on remote Indian Ocean islands over the following years. The main wreckage, the flight recorders, the answers, still gone. What is definitively known is that someone on that plane intended to change its course. What happened in that cockpit and why remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the modern age. Every single one of these cases, Earhart, Hoffa, Murray, McCann, Swanson, Flight 370, shares one unbearable quality. They are not cold cases in the traditional sense. They are open wounds. The most sophisticated search technology humanity has ever built could not close them. Witnesses were present, evidence existed, patterns emerged, and still the answers refused to arrive. The most dangerous kind of mystery isn't the one with no clues. It's the one with enough clues to know something happened, and not enough to know what. These missing persons mysteries have outlived investigators, dominated headlines for decades, and shattered the certainty that justice, or at least truth, is inevitable. Some disappearances are never solved, some people are never found, and some answers exist only in places we simply cannot reach.
Welcome to Crime Reveals.